Welcome to a journey through the history of the Los Angeles Lakers, one of basketball's most storied and successful franchises. Tonight, we'll explore the team's origins, from its humble beginnings in the Midwest to its transformation into a dynasty that would define professional basketball. So settle in, get comfortable, and let the story of the Lakers ease you into rest. Our story begins not in Los Angeles, as you might expect, but in Detroit, Michigan, in the years immediately following World War II. The year was 1946, a time when professional basketball was still finding its footing in America, when the sport existed in the shadow of baseball and football, when the very structure of professional basketball leagues was uncertain and constantly evolving. The National Basketball League had been operating since the late 1930s, featuring teams primarily from smaller Midwestern cities, and it was in this league that our story truly begins. Detroit was awarded a franchise in the NBL for the 1946-47 season, a team that would be called the Detroit Gems. The name was meant to evoke value and brilliance, to suggest that this basketball team would be a jewel in Detroit's sporting crown. But the reality of that inaugural season was far from the promise implied by the name. The Detroit Gems were not gems at all. They were, in fact, one of the worst teams in the history of professional basketball, a collection of players who simply couldn't compete at the level required to win games in the NBL. The season was a disaster from start to finish. Game after game, the Gems took the court and lost, unable to find any rhythm or consistency, overwhelmed by opponents who were better organized and more talented. The losses accumulated with depressing regularity, 10 straight losses, then 20, then 30. By the time the season mercifully ended, the Detroit Gems had posted a record of 4 wins and 40 losses, a winning percentage so abysmal that it remains one of the worst in professional basketball history. For wins, 40 losses. For fans who had supported the team, who had purchased tickets hoping to watch competitive basketball, the season must have been almost unbearable. There were no moral victories to take away, no signs that improvement was coming, just loss after loss, embarrassment piled upon embarrassment, a team that seemed overmatched almost every time it took the court. The Gems were not just bad, they were historically, memorably bad, the kind of team that defines futility. But the problems extended beyond just the win-loss record. The Gems were also struggling financially, bleeding money in ways that made their long-term survival uncertain. Attendance was poor, as you might expect for a team that almost never won. Fans weren't interested in paying to watch a team get demolished night after night, weren't willing to invest their time and money in supporting a franchise that gave them nothing to cheer about. The revenue from ticket sales couldn't cover the costs of operating a professional basketball team, and the losses mounted not just in the standings, but in the team's accounting books as well. The owners, facing financial ruin and seeing no path forward in Detroit, made the decision to sell. They needed to cut their losses, to find someone else willing to take on the burden of this failing franchise, to escape before the financial hole became even deeper. And in 1947, they found buyers, though the sale price tells you everything you need to know about the franchise's value at that moment. 2 Minnesota businessmen, Ben Berger and Morris Chalfin, purchased the Detroit Gems for approximately $15,000. $15,000. To put that in perspective, that's roughly what a decent used car might cost today, adjusted for inflation. It was a pittance, a bargain basement price that reflected just how little value the franchise had after one catastrophic season in Detroit. Berger and Chalfin weren't paying for a proven commodity or a successful business. They were buying the rights to a failed team, the remnants of an experiment that hadn't worked, the opportunity to try again somewhere else with what little remained. But Berger and Chalfin saw potential where others saw only failure. They understood that the Detroit Gems' problems weren't necessarily about basketball potential, but about market, about management, about building something properly rather than simply throwing a team together and hoping it would work. They believed that with better organization, better talent evaluation, better everything, a successful basketball franchise could be built from these ashes. The first decision was to move the team out of Detroit, to bring it to Minneapolis, to their home market where they could oversee operations directly and where they believed basketball could thrive. Minneapolis in 1947 was a growing city, recovering from the war years, looking for entertainment and diversion. The city had no professional basketball team, no major sports franchise to rally around, and Berger and Chalfin believed there was an opportunity to fill that void, to give Minneapolis something to support and embrace. But purchasing a failed franchise and moving it to a new city was just the beginning. The real work lay in building an organization that could succeed, that could compete, that could give fans in Minneapolis reason to care about professional basketball. And this is where an unlikely figure enters our story. A sports writer who would play a crucial role in the franchise's transformation despite never appearing in box scores or coaching from the sideline. Sid Hartman was a young sports writer for the Minneapolis Tribune, covering local sports and building relationships throughout Minnesota's athletic community. He knew coaches, knew players, knew the basketball landscape in ways that Berger and Chalfin, as businessmen rather than basketball people, did not. And quietly, almost behind the scenes, Hartman began helping the new owners assemble the pieces they would need to build a successful franchise. Hartman's involvement was unusual, the kind of blurred line between journalism and team operations that would be considered unethical today, but that was more common in that era when professional sports were smaller and less formal. He helped identify potential front office personnel, made introductions, advised on basketball decisions, all while still working as a sports writer covering the team. His knowledge and his connections became invaluable assets as the franchise took shape in its new home. One of Hartman's most important contributions was convincing John Kunla to become the team's head coach. Kunla was coaching college basketball at the University of St. Thomas, a small Catholic college in St. Paul, and he was successful and comfortable in that role. He had no particular reason to leave the college game for the uncertainty of professional basketball, especially for a franchise that had just finished 4-40 in its previous incarnation. But Hartman, using his powers of persuasion and his understanding of what the franchise could become, convinced Kunla to take a chance, to accept the challenge of coaching this new Minneapolis team. Kunla's hiring would prove to be one of the most important decisions in franchise history, though nobody could have known it at the time. He brought organization and basketball knowledge, an ability to teach and develop players, a calm demeanor that would serve him well through the successes and challenges that lay ahead. He was young, just 31 years old when he took the job, but he had vision and capability that would help transform the franchise from the wreckage of the Detroit Gems into something entirely different. With ownership in place, with Hartman working behind the scenes, with Kunla hired as coach, the franchise needed one more crucial element: a name, an identity that would connect it to Minneapolis and Minnesota, that would give fans something to rally around and identify with. The choice they settled on was perfect, rooted in Minnesota geography and culture in a way that made immediate sense to anyone familiar with the state. Minnesota was known as the Land of 10,000 Lakes, a nickname that captured the state's distinctive geography, the countless bodies of water that dotted the landscape, the lakes that defined summers and recreation and outdoor life for Minnesotans. The name Lakers honored this identity, connecting the basketball team directly to the state's character and geography. It wasn't flashy or aggressive like some team names. There was something gentle and descriptive about it, something that felt authentically Minnesota. So the Minneapolis Lakers were born, rising from the ashes of the Detroit Gems, carrying a new name in a new city with new leadership and new hope. The transformation was complete. What had been a catastrophic failure in Detroit would get a second chance in Minneapolis, an opportunity to build something lasting and successful. The 4-40 record was history, left behind in Detroit along with the Gems name and the disappointing memories of that terrible season. The Lakers would take the court for the first time in Minneapolis for the 1947-48 season, and while nobody could have predicted just how successful they would become, while the championships and the legends and the dynasty were still years away from being built, the foundation was in place. The ownership was committed, the coach was capable, and the name was perfect. From those humble beginnings, from a $15,000 purchase of basketball's biggest failure, something remarkable was about to be constructed. As the Minneapolis Lakers prepared for their first season in 1947, as ownership and coaching settled into place, as the franchise worked to distance itself from the disaster that had been the Detroit Gems, they received an opportunity that would change everything. A stroke of fortune, a chance to acquire a player who would not only transform their franchise, but would help define what professional basketball could be, who would become the sport's first true superstar in an era when the game was still finding its identity. The opportunity came through a dispersal draft, a mechanism used when teams folded or left leagues, distributing their players to remaining franchises. The Chicago American Gears had collapsed, and their roster was being divided among the other teams. The Lakers, as one of the league's weaker franchises, remember, they were coming off that 4-40 season as the Detroit Gems, had a high pick in this dispersal draft. And with that pick, they selected a player who had been the Gears' star, a young center from DePaul University who was already making a name for himself as someone special. George Mikan stood 6 feet 10 inches tall, an imposing height for that era when basketball players were generally much smaller than they would become in later generations. But Mikan wasn't just tall. He was skilled in ways that big men of his time typically weren't. He could shoot with either hand, could make hook shots from both sides of the basket, had footwork and coordination that allowed him to maneuver around defenders despite his size. He wore thick glasses, which gave him a distinctive appearance and which he needed because his eyesight was poor, but on the basketball court, he could see everything he needed to see. Mikan had dominated college basketball at DePaul, averaging over 20 points per game at a time when entire teams sometimes struggled to score 40. He had led the nation in scoring, had won championships, had changed how the game was played simply by being so much larger and more skilled than anyone who tried to defend him. When he entered professional basketball, there was genuine curiosity about whether he could dominate at this higher level the way he had in college, whether professional players would be able to contain him, or whether he would prove equally unstoppable. The answer came quickly. Mikan arrived in Minneapolis and immediately transformed the Lakers from a terrible team into a championship contender. His presence in the paint changed everything about how the Lakers could play basketball. On offense, they could simply throw the ball to Mikan near the basket and let him work, using his size and skill to score over defenders who simply couldn't match up with him physically. On defense, he protected the rim, blocking or altering shots, making opponents hesitant to drive toward the basket knowing that Mikan was waiting there. In that first season in Minneapolis, the 1947-48 campaign, the Lakers won the NBL championship. From 4-40 the previous year to league champions. The transformation was almost unbelievable, a complete reversal that demonstrated just how much impact one truly great player could have on a basketball team. Mikan averaged over 21 points per game, an enormous total for that era, and he was named the league's most valuable player. The Lakers had found their cornerstone, their franchise player, the piece around which everything else could be built. But the professional basketball landscape was complicated in the late 1940s, fragmented among competing leagues that were vying for supremacy, for fans, for the best players. The NBL, where the Lakers had just won their championship, was one league. The Basketball Association of America, the BAA, was another, generally considered to have teams in larger markets and better organization. These two leagues competed for talent and attention, and franchises sometimes switched between them seeking better opportunities or stronger competition. After winning the NBL title in 1948, the Lakers made a significant decision. They jumped to the BAA, joining that league for the 1948-49 season. The move was about positioning the franchise for the future, about being part of what seemed like the more stable and promising league. And in their first season in the BAA, the Lakers proved that their success hadn't been a fluke tied to the NBL's level of competition. They dominated the BAA as well, going through the regular season with an excellent record and then advancing through the playoffs to win the championship. This BAA championship in 1949 would turn out to be historic for a reason that nobody fully appreciated at the time. It was the final BAA championship ever awarded, because after that season, the NBL and BAA merged, combining to form a new league that would be called the National Basketball Association, the NBA. The merger brought together the best teams and players from both leagues, creating a unified professional basketball organization that could finally provide stability and structure to the sport. The Lakers, as BAA champions when the merger occurred, entered the newly formed NBA as one of the league's premier franchises. And they proceeded to dominate this new league just as they had dominated the NBL and BAA. In the NBA's first season, 1949-50, the Lakers won the championship. They won again in 1952, claiming their third title in the league's first 3 years. They won once more in 1953 and then again in 1954 for championships in the NBA's first 5 seasons, establishing a dynasty that had no equal in professional basketball at that time. The success wasn't just about George Mikan, though he remained the centerpiece, the player around whom everything revolved. The Lakers had built a complete team, surrounding Mikan with talented players who complemented his game and who were exceptional in their own right. These players would all eventually be recognized in the Basketball Hall of Fame, testament to the depth of talent that the Lakers had assembled during this dynasty period. Jim Pollard was a forward who could run the floor with speed that was unusual for frontcourt players of that era. He was athletic and graceful, capable of finishing fast breaks with spectacular plays, able to score in a variety of ways. Pollard's quickness and versatility gave the Lakers a dimension beyond just Mikan's interior dominance, allowing them to play at different tempos and in different styles depending on what the game required. Vern Mickelson was a power forward who provided toughness and rebounding, doing the physical work in the paint that allowed Mikan to focus on scoring. He battled for position, grabbed rebounds, set screens, did all the unglamorous but essential tasks that winning teams need. Mickelson wasn't flashy, but he was effective, the kind of player whose contributions showed up more in team success than in individual statistics. Slater Martin was the point guard, the player who handled the ball and ran the offense, who made sure everyone got involved and that the ball found its way to the right players at the right times. Martin was small by basketball standards, but he was quick and smart, able to penetrate defenses and create opportunities for his teammates. He was the floor general, the extension of Coach Kunla on the court, making sure the Lakers executed their game plan. Clyde Lavalette joined the team later in the dynasty, adding another scoring option and helping to extend the Lakers' success even as some of the original pieces began to age. Lavalette was a big man like Mikan, capable of scoring inside, providing depth and versatility to the frontcourt rotation. Together, these players formed the NBA's first true powerhouse, a team that didn't just win occasionally, but that dominated year after year, that established what it meant to be a championship franchise in professional basketball. John Kunla coached them with steady competence, managing egos and rotations, keeping the team focused through the long seasons and the pressures of defending championships. The Minneapolis Lakers of the late 1940s and early 1950s set the standard for excellence that every team that followed would be measured against. George Mikan's dominance was so complete that it actually led to rule changes in basketball, modifications to the game designed to limit his effectiveness and to give other teams a better chance to compete. The lane was widened, increasing the distance from the basket that Mikan could operate within. Goaltending rules were implemented to prevent defenders from simply batting away shots after they'd begun their downward arc toward the basket. These changes were direct responses to Mikan's dominance, acknowledgments that the game needed to evolve because one player had become too dominant under the existing rules. The impact of these championship years in Minneapolis extended far beyond just the titles themselves. The Lakers had proven that professional basketball could work, that teams could build sustained success, that fans would support a winner. They had demonstrated what a dynasty looked like in this sport, establishing patterns and expectations that would influence how basketball franchises operated for decades to come. Build around a dominant center. Surround him with complementary players. Play tough defense. Execute in crucial moments. These principles, established by the Minneapolis Lakers of Mikan's era, would echo through basketball history. By the mid-1950s, as Mikan aged and eventually retired, the dynasty began to fade. The Lakers remained competitive for a while, but couldn't maintain the championship level without their dominant center. The NBA was evolving, new teams were rising, and the Lakers' window of dominance was closing. But what they had accomplished, 5 championships in 6 years across the NBL, BAA, and early NBA, stood as a monument to excellence, a reminder of professional basketball's first great team. Those championship banners hung in the Minneapolis arena, testaments to glory years when the Lakers had been the best team in basketball, when George Mikan had been the sport's brightest star, when a franchise that had started as the failed Detroit Gems had transformed into the NBA's first dynasty. The land of 10,000 lakes had embraced its Lakers, had celebrated championships, had witnessed the beginning of a legacy that would eventually extend to another city, but that would always carry the memories of where it truly began. The championship years in Minneapolis had been glorious, a period when the Lakers stood atop professional basketball, when George Mikan dominated the sport in ways no player had before, when banners were raised and parades celebrated success that seemed like it might continue indefinitely. But sports dynasties, like all things, eventually come to an end. Players age, skills diminish, and the competitive balance that makes sports compelling ensures that no team can stay on top forever. For the Minneapolis Lakers, the end of their dynasty came gradually through the late 1950s, as the pieces that had made them champions slowly fell away. George Mikan retired after the 1954 season, his body worn down by years of physical play, his knees and back no longer able to withstand the punishment of professional basketball. He had carried the Lakers to 5 championships, had been the centerpiece of everything they accomplished, and his departure left a void that couldn't be filled. The Lakers tried to remain competitive without their star, tried to rebuild around other players, tried to find the next great center who could anchor the franchise the way Mikan had. But that kind of generational talent doesn't come along often, and the Lakers couldn't replace what they had lost. The team's performance declined. They were still respectable, still winning more games than they lost in most seasons, but they were no longer championship contenders, no longer the team that everyone else was chasing. The Western Division of the NBA featured strong competition, and the Lakers found themselves finishing in the middle of the pack, making the playoffs occasionally, but never advancing deep, never threatening to reclaim the glory of those championship years. For fans who had grown accustomed to championships, to watching the best team in basketball, this mediocrity was disappointing, a steady come down from the heights they had experienced. But more troubling than the decline in performance was what was happening at the box office. Attendance, which had been strong during the championship years when the team was exciting and successful, began to drop. Fans who had packed the arena to watch George Mikan and the Lakers dominate were less interested in watching a mediocre team struggle to compete. Game by game, season by season, the crowds grew smaller, the enthusiasm diminished, the excitement that had surrounded Lakers basketball faded into something closer to indifference. Minneapolis in the late 1950s was a mid-sized market, not a major metropolitan area like New York or Chicago. The city could support a professional basketball team when that team was winning championships, when there was genuine excitement and pride in the accomplishment. But sustaining interest through losing seasons, through the ordinary ups and downs of a team that wasn't exceptional, proved more difficult. Other entertainment options competed for discretionary spending. Television was becoming more popular, giving people alternatives to attending games in person. The economics of running a professional basketball team in Minneapolis were becoming increasingly challenging. The financial struggles created real problems for the franchise's ownership. Bob Short had purchased the team in the late 1950s, and he found himself presiding over an organization that was bleeding money despite its proud history. The revenue from ticket sales wasn't enough to cover the costs of operating the team, of paying players and staff, of maintaining facilities, and managing all the expenses that came with running a professional sports franchise. Short was a businessman, and the business of the Minneapolis Lakers was failing, no matter how much history and tradition the franchise could claim. Short began looking for solutions, for ways to make the franchise financially viable, to turn the Lakers into a sustainable business rather than a money-losing proposition. He considered various options, explored different approaches, but increasingly, one possibility seemed to offer the best chance for the franchise's survival and success: relocation. Moving the team to a larger market, to a city where the population and the economy could support professional basketball even through difficult seasons, where the potential for revenue was simply greater than what Minneapolis could provide. The template for such a move had been established just a few years earlier, not in basketball, but in baseball. The Brooklyn Dodgers, one of baseball's most storied franchises, had shocked the sports world in 1957 by relocating to Los Angeles. Brooklyn fans had been devastated, unable to believe that their beloved Dodgers were leaving, that the team they had supported for generations was abandoning them for the West Coast. But from a business perspective, the move had been spectacularly successful. Los Angeles was a huge and growing market, a city with millions of residents and an economy that could support major league sports at a level Brooklyn never could. The Dodgers had thrived in Los Angeles, drawing enormous crowds, generating substantial revenue, proving that West Coast sports could work despite the geographic challenges and the distance from traditional sports centers in the East and Midwest. Bob Short watched the Dodgers' success in Los Angeles with great interest. He saw a large market that had embraced baseball, that had shown an appetite for professional sports, that represented an opportunity the Lakers couldn't find in Minneapolis. Los Angeles had no professional basketball team, no NBA franchise despite being one of the largest cities in the country. The market was open, the potential was enormous, and Short became convinced that relocating the Lakers to Los Angeles was the answer to the franchise's financial problems. The decision to move was not made lightly. The Lakers had history in Minneapolis, had won championships there, had created memories and traditions that meant something to the fans who had supported them through those glory years. Moving meant abandoning that history, leaving behind the fans who had celebrated those championships, breaking the connection between the team and the city that had given it a home when it was fleeing the disaster of Detroit. But the financial realities were inescapable, and Short concluded that the franchise couldn't survive in Minneapolis, that the only path forward required relocation to a market that could sustain professional basketball. So in 1960, the announcement came. The Minneapolis Lakers would be moving to Los Angeles for the 1960-61 season. The Lakers would become the NBA's first West Coast team, pioneers in bringing professional basketball to California, taking a chance on a market that had no established basketball culture, but that offered possibilities that the Midwest couldn't match. The move would change professional basketball's geography, beginning the league's expansion westward that would eventually see multiple California franchises and teams scattered across the western United States. One curious aspect of the relocation was the decision to keep the Lakers' name despite it making no sense in the new location. Minneapolis, the land of 10,000 lakes, had lakes everywhere, water defining the landscape and culture. Los Angeles, by contrast, had almost no natural lakes, the arid Southern California climate creating a geography defined more by ocean and mountains than by inland bodies of water. The Lakers' name, so perfect for Minnesota, seemed almost absurd in Los Angeles, a geographic mismatch that would become one of the most famous examples of a team name that doesn't fit its location. Short could have renamed the team, could have chosen something more appropriate for Los Angeles, could have started fresh with an identity that reflected the new city rather than the old one. But he chose to keep the Lakers' name, preserving that connection to the franchise's history, maintaining the thread that linked the championships in Minneapolis to whatever would come next in Los Angeles. The name carried weight, carried recognition, carried a legacy of success even if it didn't make geographic sense anymore. So the Los Angeles Lakers were born, a California team with a Minnesota name, carrying forward a history of championships while embarking on a completely new chapter in a completely new place. The move was bittersweet for everyone involved. Minneapolis fans felt abandoned, betrayed by the departure of a team that had brought them so much joy during those championship years. The final games in Minneapolis were marked by sadness, by the knowledge that an era was ending, that the Lakers who had been so much a part of the city's identity were leaving and wouldn't be coming back. Players who had spent years in Minneapolis, who had built lives and relationships there, had to uproot and start over in California, adjusting to a new city and a new life far from what they had known. But for the franchise's survival, the move was necessary. Los Angeles offered opportunities that Minneapolis simply couldn't provide: a massive market, a growing population, an economy that could sustain professional sports even through difficult seasons. The Lakers were taking a gamble, betting that they could build a fan base in a city with no basketball tradition, that Los Angeles would embrace them the way Minneapolis had during the championship years. The 1960-61 season would be the first in Los Angeles, the beginning of a new era that would eventually bring championships and legends and moments that would define professional basketball. But in 1960, as the Lakers packed up and headed west, as they said goodbye to Minneapolis and prepared to introduce themselves to Los Angeles, the future was uncertain. They were pioneers, the NBA's first West Coast team, carrying a name that didn't fit their new home, but that connected them to a proud history. The Minneapolis dynasty was over, but the Lakers' story was far from finished. It was simply moving to a bigger stage, a larger market, a place where the franchise would eventually achieve even greater success than it had known in Minnesota, where the Lakers would become not just champions but icons, where the purple and gold would become synonymous with basketball excellence in ways that even those great Minneapolis teams could never have imagined. The Lakers arrived in Los Angeles carrying their Minnesota legacy, but needing to build something new, to create an identity that would resonate with California fans who had no connection to those Minneapolis championships, who needed their own stars and their own reasons to care about professional basketball. Fortunately for the franchise, they had already begun assembling the pieces that would define the Lakers' first California era, players whose talent and charisma would capture Los Angeles' imagination and establish the Lakers as worthy of the city's attention and passion. Elgin Baylor had joined the Lakers in 1958, while the team was still in Minneapolis, arriving as the first overall pick in the draft from Seattle University. Baylor was unlike any player the league had seen before, combining grace and power in ways that seemed almost impossible. He could soar to the rim for spectacular dunks, could twist and contort his body in midair to finish acrobatic layups, could rebound with authority despite facing taller opponents. His game was improvisational, creative, filled with moves that looked like they belonged to a different sport entirely, to something more balletic and artistic than basketball was supposed to be. When the Lakers moved to Los Angeles, Baylor came with them, and he became the franchise's first California star, the player who gave Los Angeles fans a reason to come to the sports arena and watch this transplanted team from Minnesota. He averaged over 30 points per game in that first Los Angeles season, scoring with a consistency and creativity that made him one of the most exciting players in the entire league. Watching Baylor was an experience, each game bringing moments where he would do something that seemed to defy physics, that would make fans rise from their seats in astonishment. But Baylor alone, as spectacular as he was, couldn't carry the Lakers to championships. The franchise needed more talent, more pieces that could complement Baylor's brilliance and create a complete team capable of competing with the best in the NBA. That second piece arrived in 1960, when the Lakers selected Jerry West with the second overall pick in the draft, bringing in a guard from West Virginia University who would become one of the greatest players in basketball history. Jerry West was smooth and skilled, a player who could score from anywhere on the court, who played with a quiet intensity that contrasted with Baylor's more flamboyant style. West could shoot from long range with accuracy that was remarkable for that era, could drive to the basket with quickness that defenders struggled to contain, could defend with tenacity that made him valuable on both ends of the floor. He was fundamentally sound, executing the basics of basketball with a precision that coaches appreciated, but he was also capable of spectacular plays when the moment demanded them. Together, Baylor and West formed one of the most potent offensive duos in NBA history. They complemented each other perfectly. Baylor with his improvisational creativity, West with his technical precision, both capable of taking over games and carrying the scoring load, both willing to share the ball and work within the team structure. The Lakers suddenly had two stars of the highest caliber, two players who could compete with anyone in the league, two reasons for fans to believe that championships were possible in Los Angeles just as they had been in Minneapolis. The 1961-62 season showcased just how dominant this duo could be. The Lakers finished with an excellent regular season record and advanced to the NBA Finals, where they would face the Boston Celtics in a matchup that would define the Lakers' 1960s experience in ways both glorious and heartbreaking. That final series produced individual performances that still stand as among the greatest in playoff history, moments of brilliance that demonstrated just how special Baylor and West were. Elgin Baylor averaged 38 points and 18 rebounds per game throughout the final series. 38 points and 18 rebounds. Those numbers seem almost impossible, the kind of production that suggests dominance so complete that opponents simply had no answer. But Baylor's signature moment came in Game 5, played at the Boston Garden, when he scored 61 points, a total that remains the highest scoring finals game in NBA history. 61 points in the championship series, on the road, against the best defensive team in basketball. The performance was transcendent, Baylor scoring from everywhere, in every way, carrying the Lakers on his shoulders in the most important games of the season. Jerry West, not to be outdone, averaged over 30 points per game himself during the regular season. The Lakers had two players averaging over 30 points per game, a rarity even in that era when scoring was generally higher than it would be in later decades. The offensive firepower was staggering, the ability to score seemingly limitless, the potential for explosive performances always present whenever Baylor and West took the court together. But despite all this individual brilliance, despite Baylor's 61-point game and West's consistency, despite having two of the best players in basketball performing at their absolute peaks, the Lakers lost the 1962 finals to the Boston Celtics in 7 games. It was the beginning of a pattern that would define the Lakers' 1960s, a decade of excellence that somehow never quite resulted in championships, of reaching the pinnacle only to fall just short against the same opponent every single time. The Boston Celtics of the 1960s were a dynasty, perhaps the greatest dynasty in basketball history. Led by Bill Russell, the defensive genius and rebounding machine who changed how basketball was played, coached by the legendary Red Auerbach, featuring Hall of Fame talents like Bob Cousy, Sam Jones, and John Havlicek, the Celtics won championship after championship, dominating the NBA with a consistency that seemed almost unfair to everyone else. And standing in their way most often were the Lakers, the team with enough talent to reach the finals, but not quite enough to overcome Boston's collective brilliance. 6 times in the 1960s, the Lakers reached the NBA Finals. 6 opportunities to claim the championship, to validate all the talent and all the regular season success, to bring a title to Los Angeles and reward the fans who had embraced the transplanted franchise. And 6 times, they lost to the Boston Celtics. 1962, 1963, 1965, 1966, 1968, 1969. Year after year, the same heartbreaking result, the same opponent celebrating while the Lakers went home empty-handed, the same crushing disappointment of coming so close but falling short. Several of these series were agonizingly close, decided not by dominant Boston victories, but by the smallest of margins, by plays that could have gone either way, by moments where a single shot or a single defensive stop might have changed everything. The 1962 finals went 7 games, with Game 7 coming down to the final possession. The 1969 finals also went 7 games, with the deciding contest featuring drama and tension until the final moments. These weren't cases of the Lakers being clearly inferior. They were cases of 2 excellent teams battling to exhaustion, with Boston somehow always finding a way to make the crucial play, to get the key stop, to win the games that mattered most. Jerry West's reputation as Mr. Clutch was forged during these finals appearances, during moments when he delivered spectacular performances even in losing efforts. He hit enormous shots, made plays that should have won championships, performed under pressure in ways that few players ever have. The nickname wasn't ironic. West genuinely was clutch, genuinely delivered in crucial moments. But somehow, it was never quite enough to overcome the Celtics, never quite sufficient to deliver the championship that his performances deserved. The frustration of these finals losses accumulated over the decade, creating a weight that hung over the franchise and the players. Baylor and West were among the greatest players in basketball, putting up statistics and performances that should have resulted in multiple championships. But instead, they had only finals defeats, only the memories of coming close but falling short, only the pain of watching Bill Russell and the Celtics celebrate while they walked off the court in disappointment. The rivalry between the Lakers and Celtics became one of sports' most famous, a decade-long battle between excellence and greater excellence, between 2 franchises carrying the NBA through its early years in different markets, representing different styles and different regions. The Celtics represented tradition and team basketball, sacrificing individual statistics for collective success. The Lakers represented star power and offensive brilliance, showcasing individual talents within a team framework. And every year through the 1960s, when these teams met in the finals, it was the Celtics' approach that prevailed, their teamwork that overcame the Lakers' star power. For Los Angeles fans, the finals appearances were both thrilling and agonizing. They could take pride in having a team good enough to reach the championship series year after year, could celebrate watching Baylor and West perform at the highest level, could enjoy the excitement of playoff basketball and finals appearances. But the lack of championships created a hunger, a desire to finally break through, to finally overcome the Celtics and claim a title. The wait till next year mentality became familiar, the belief that surely the next finals appearance would be different, that eventually the Lakers would find a way to win. The 1960s Lakers established the franchise in Los Angeles, proved that basketball could work on the West Coast, created a fan base and a tradition that would sustain the team for decades. But they also created a legacy of heartbreak, of coming so close to championships without ever quite achieving them, of individual brilliance that wasn't quite enough to overcome collective greatness. Elgin Baylor and Jerry West gave the Lakers everything they had, performed at levels that few players have ever matched, and still couldn't deliver the championship that would have validated their excellence and rewarded their efforts. The finals losses to Boston became defining moments, shaping how the 1960s Lakers would be remembered, not as champions, but as magnificent near champions, as the team that was always good enough to reach the finals, but never quite good enough to win them. By the late 1960s, the Lakers' pattern of reaching the finals only to lose to the Celtics had become almost ritualistic, a painful annual tradition that left fans and players frustrated and searching for answers. What would it take to finally overcome Boston? What piece was missing that could transform the Lakers from perennial runners-up into champions? The answer, Lakers management believed, was to acquire another superstar, to add a third Hall of Fame talent who could tip the balance in their favor when the finals arrived. In 1968, the Lakers made a move that shook the entire NBA, acquiring Wilt Chamberlain from the Philadelphia 76ers in a trade that sent multiple players to Philadelphia in exchange for basketball's most physically dominant player. Wilt Chamberlain was a force of nature, a 7'1" center who had rewritten basketball's record books with statistical achievements that seemed almost fictional in their enormity. He had once scored 100 points in a single game, a record that still stands and that seems likely never to be broken. He had averaged over 50 points per game for an entire season. He had grabbed over 50 rebounds in individual games. His combination of size, strength, and athleticism was unprecedented, making him virtually unstoppable when he wanted to score. The acquisition created a superstar trio unlike any the NBA had seen before. Elgin Baylor, still capable of spectacular performances despite being in the latter stages of his career. Jerry West, at his absolute peak, performing at an MVP level. And now Wilt Chamberlain, the most dominant center in basketball. 3 future Hall of Famers, 3 of the greatest players of their generation, all on the same team. The potential was staggering, the talent level almost unfair. Surely, with this much firepower, the Lakers could finally overcome the Celtics and claim the championship that had eluded them throughout the 1960s. But basketball, as the Lakers had learned painfully over the years, isn't always that simple. The 1968-69 season saw the Lakers reach the finals once again, facing their familiar tormentors, the Boston Celtics. And once again, despite having Chamberlain now added to Baylor and West, despite having perhaps the most talented roster in basketball, the Lakers lost in 7 games. The heartbreak was even more acute this time because the expectations had been so high, because it seemed inconceivable that even with Chamberlain they still couldn't beat Boston, because the curse seemed to be something deeper than just talent disparity. Chamberlain's first 2 seasons with the Lakers ended in finals defeats, 1969 to the Celtics and 1970 to the New York Knicks. The superstar trio wasn't producing championships, and questions began to arise about whether these 3 great players could actually coexist effectively, whether having too much talent concentrated in 3 players might actually be a problem rather than a solution. The chemistry seemed off at times, the roles unclear, the balance between individual excellence and team success difficult to find. But in 1970, Bill Sharman was hired as the Lakers' head coach, bringing a new voice and a new approach to a team that desperately needed fresh perspective. Sharman had been a great player himself, a Hall of Famer who understood basketball at the highest level. As a coach, he was innovative and demanding, implementing systems and practices that pushed players to perform at their best while also creating a structure that allowed individual talents to flourish within a team concept. The 1971-72 season would prove to be the breakthrough, the year when everything finally came together, when the talent and the coaching and the experience all aligned to produce something special. The season began well, with the Lakers winning consistently, playing excellent basketball on both ends of the floor. But early in the season, Elgin Baylor, his knees no longer able to withstand the demands of professional basketball, announced his retirement. Baylor had been part of the Lakers for 13 seasons, had given the franchise countless memorable moments, had been one of the greatest players in basketball history. His retirement was bittersweet, sad because it marked the end of a magnificent career, but also creating an opportunity for the team to adjust its rotation and perhaps find the balance that had eluded them. With Baylor retired, the Lakers made subtle adjustments to how they played, with other players stepping into larger roles, with Chamberlain and West forming a slightly different dynamic than the three-star system had allowed. And the results were immediate and spectacular. The Lakers began winning and kept winning, stringing together victories in a streak that seemed to have no end. They won 10 straight games, then 15, then 20. Still the streak continued. 25 straight wins. 30 straight wins. Finally, the streak reached an incredible 33 consecutive victories, an NBA record that still stands today and that may never be broken. 33 straight wins. Think about what that requires. No off nights, no lapses in concentration, no games where the shots don't fall or the opponent gets hot at the wrong time. Just winning, game after game, night after night, regardless of opponent or circumstance. The streak carried the Lakers through November, December, and into January, creating national attention and establishing them as not just good but historically dominant. By season's end, the Lakers had won 69 games and lost just 13, posting the best record in NBA history at that time. 69 wins in a single season, a total that represented excellence sustained over an entire year, that demonstrated the Lakers were operating at a level few teams had ever reached. They led the NBA in scoring, in rebounds, in assists, dominating every major statistical category, showing that they could beat teams in multiple ways, that their excellence was comprehensive rather than one-dimensional. Bill Sharman won Coach of the Year honors, recognition of how he had taken this talented roster and finally unlocked its full potential, had created a system that maximized strengths while minimizing weaknesses, had gotten everyone buying into team concepts while still allowing stars to be stars. Sharman's impact couldn't be overstated. He had done what previous coaches couldn't, had found the formula that turned the Lakers from finals losers into dominant champions. The playoffs brought the ultimate test, the chance to prove that the regular season dominance could translate to championship success. The Lakers advanced through the Western Conference, winning their series and reaching the finals once again. This time, their opponent wasn't the Celtics. Boston's dynasty had finally ended, their aging roster no longer able to reach the finals. Instead, the Lakers faced the New York Knicks, the defending champions who had beaten them in the 1970 finals. The 1972 finals would be different from those painful losses to Boston. The Lakers won Game 1 in Los Angeles. They won Game 2. The series moved to New York, and the Lakers won Game 3. They were 3 games away from the championship, one more victory from finally breaking through, from claiming the title that had eluded them for so long. Game 4 saw the Knicks fight back and win on their home court, extending the series and keeping their championship hopes alive. But in Game 5, back in Los Angeles, the Lakers would not be denied. The game was tense, both teams fighting for every possession, knowing that this game would likely determine the championship. Wilt Chamberlain was magnificent, dominating the paint in ways that justified his reputation as basketball's most physically imposing player. He scored 24 points, but more impressively, he grabbed 29 rebounds, controlling the boards and giving the Lakers extra possessions while limiting New York's second chances. 29 rebounds in a championship-clinching game. It was vintage Chamberlain, using his size and strength to impose his will when it mattered most. Jerry West, Mr. Clutch, performed as he always had in big moments, scoring and facilitating, making plays that kept the Lakers ahead when the Knicks threatened to rally. The supporting cast contributed crucial baskets and defensive stops. And when the final buzzer sounded, when the scoreboard showed the Lakers as victors, when it was finally, undeniably real, the celebration began. The Los Angeles Lakers were NBA champions for the first time. The curse was broken, the finals heartbreak finally overcome. The years of disappointment washed away in the joy of this achievement. Wilt Chamberlain was named Finals MVP, recognition of his dominance in the clinching game and throughout the series. Jerry West, after all those finals losses, finally had his championship, finally had the title that his performances over the years had deserved. The city of Los Angeles celebrated its first basketball championship, embracing the Lakers in ways that validated the franchise's move from Minneapolis over a decade earlier. The 1971-72 Lakers entered the conversation as one of the greatest teams in NBA history. The 69-13 record, the 33-game winning streak, the comprehensive statistical dominance, and finally the championship, all of it combined to create a season that would be remembered and discussed for decades. They hadn't just won. They had dominated, had shown a level of excellence that established a new standard for what Lakers basketball could be. For Wilt Chamberlain, the championship was validation after years of criticism suggesting he couldn't win the big one, that despite all his individual achievements, he wasn't a true winner. The Finals MVP award and the championship ring silenced those critics, proved that he could sacrifice individual statistics for team success, that he could be the anchor of a championship team. For Jerry West, the relief must have been enormous. All those finals losses, all those magnificent performances in defeat, all those close calls and heartbreaks, finally overcome. He could retire knowing he'd achieved the ultimate goal, that he'd been part of a championship team. For the franchise, the championship established the Lakers as capable of winning in Los Angeles, as more than just a transplanted team trading on Minneapolis history. They had their own championship now, their own glory, their own place in basketball history. The curse was broken, and the Lakers had finally become true champions in their California home. The championship in 1972 had broken the curse, had finally given the Lakers and their fans the title they had pursued so desperately through all those finals losses. But championship windows don't stay open forever, and the Lakers of the early 1970s were aging, their core stars moving into the twilight of their careers. Wilt Chamberlain was in his late 30s. Jerry West's legs were giving out after years of relentless play, and the younger players who might have sustained the dynasty weren't quite at the level needed to keep the Lakers among the NBA's elite. The 1972-73 season would be Wilt Chamberlain's final year in professional basketball, the end of a career that had redefined what was possible for a basketball player, that had produced statistical achievements that still seem almost impossible decades later. Even in this final season, even at age 36 when most players have long since retired, Chamberlain demonstrated the physical dominance that had made him legendary. He shot 72.7% from the field that season, an NBA record for field goal percentage that still stands today. 72.7%. Nearly 3 out of every 4 shots Chamberlain took went in the basket. The number reflects both his proximity to the rim. Chamberlain took mostly close-range shots where his size advantage was overwhelming, and his selectivity, his understanding at this stage of his career of when to shoot and when to pass. But it also demonstrates that even in his final season, even as age slowed him down, Chamberlain remained unstoppable when he got the ball near the basket, still capable of using his size and strength to score over any defender. The Lakers reached the finals again in 1973, their third consecutive appearance, facing the New York Knicks once more. But this time, the magic from 1972 couldn't be recaptured. The Knicks, led by Willis Reed, Walt Frazier, and a supporting cast that played exceptional team basketball, defeated the Lakers in 5 games. For Chamberlain and West, it was a disappointing end to what would be their final finals appearance together. Chamberlain retired after that season, walking away from basketball having finally won the championship that had eluded him for most of his career, but also experiencing one final finals defeat. Jerry West played 2 more seasons before his own body forced him into retirement in 1974, his knees no longer able to withstand the demands of professional basketball. West had given the Lakers 14 seasons of excellence, had been the face of the franchise through the move from Minneapolis to Los Angeles, had embodied what it meant to perform in clutch moments even when championships didn't always follow. His retirement left another void, another star from the championship era gone, another piece of the foundation removed. The Lakers remained competitive through the mid-1970s, but couldn't recapture championship form. They made the playoffs regularly, won their division occasionally, but in the postseason they fell short. unable to advance to the finals without the star power that had carried them through the previous decade. New players came and went, coaches were hired and fired, and the franchise seemed to be searching for its next identity, its next core of players who could return the Lakers to championship contention. The late 1970s brought hints that another golden age might be approaching. In 1979, the Lakers had the first overall pick in the NBA draft, a fortunate position that resulted from a complicated trade years earlier. With that pick, they selected Earvin "Magic" Johnson from Michigan State, a 6'9" point guard whose combination of size, vision, and charisma had made him a star in college. Magic had just led Michigan State to the NCAA championship, defeating Larry Bird and Indiana State in one of the most-watched college basketball games in history. The rivalry between Magic and Bird, which had captivated college basketball fans, was about to continue in the professional ranks. Magic Johnson represented something new for the Lakers, a player whose style of play was joyful and creative, who passed the ball with flair and imagination, who made everyone around him better through his unselfishness and court vision. At 6'9", he was extraordinarily tall for a point guard, able to see over defenses and make passes that smaller guards couldn't execute. But he also had the ball-handling skills and the decision-making of a traditional point guard, creating a unique combination that would revolutionize how the position could be played. The drafting of Magic Johnson suggested that the Lakers were building towards something special, that the pieces were coming together for another run at championships. But building a championship team required more than just drafting talented players. It required organizational stability, financial resources, and leadership that understood both basketball and business. And in 1979, that leadership arrived when Jerry Buss purchased the Lakers. Buss paid $67.5 million for the Lakers and the Los Angeles Kings hockey team, along with the Forum Arena where both teams played. It was an enormous sum for that era, a price that raised eyebrows throughout the sports world. But Buss wasn't just buying sports teams, he was buying entertainment properties, investing in businesses that he believed could be transformed into something more profitable and more culturally significant than they currently were. Jerry Buss was a real estate developer who had made his fortune in Southern California, accumulating wealth through apartment buildings and property investments. But his passion was entertainment, and he saw the Lakers not primarily as a basketball team, but as an entertainment brand that could be marketed and developed in ways previous owners had never considered. He understood that Los Angeles was different from other cities, that Hollywood glamour and celebrity culture created opportunities for sports franchises that didn't exist elsewhere. Under Buss's ownership, the Forum was transformed from simply a place where basketball games were played into a glamorous entertainment destination. He introduced the concept of Showtime, both as a marketing slogan and as a philosophy for how the Lakers would play and how games would be experienced. The on-court product would be fast-paced and exciting, emphasizing the fast break and spectacular plays that entertained fans. The off-court experience would be equally carefully crafted, with celebrity sightings in premium seats, with entertainment during timeouts, with an atmosphere that felt more like a Hollywood premiere than a traditional sporting event. Buss brought the Laker girls to the sidelines, a dance team that performed during breaks, and that became as much a part of the Lakers brand as the players themselves. He courted celebrities, ensuring that famous actors and musicians sat courtside where cameras would capture them, creating an association between the Lakers and Hollywood glamour. He understood that in Los Angeles, being seen at Lakers games was a social statement, a way to demonstrate status and cultural relevance. The transformation extended to how the NBA itself was perceived. Professional basketball in the late 1970s was struggling somewhat with its image, seen by some as too rough, too dominated by players whose styles didn't appeal to mainstream America. Buss's approach to the Lakers, emphasizing entertainment, glamour, and an up-tempo style of play, helped change that perception, helped make the NBA more appealing to casual fans who might not be hardcore basketball enthusiasts, but who enjoyed the spectacle and the celebrity atmosphere. The combination of Jerry Buss's vision as owner and Magic Johnson's arrival as the franchise cornerstone created the foundation for what would become one of the most successful decades in Lakers history. The pieces were in place for something special, for a return to championship basketball that would exceed even the success of the Wilt Chamberlain era. The late 1970s represented a transition period, a bridge between the West Chamberlain teams that had finally broken through in 1972 and the Showtime Lakers that would dominate the 1980s. Wilt's final season, shooting over 72% from the field, had closed one chapter with a demonstration of dominance that reflected the physical style of that era. The arrival of Magic Johnson opened a new chapter that would emphasize speed, passing, and entertainment. And Jerry Buss's purchase of the franchise ensured that the Lakers would have the resources, the vision, and the commitment to excellence needed to build another dynasty. The transformation was underway, the foundation being laid, and soon the Lakers would enter perhaps their most celebrated era, a time when Showtime would captivate not just Los Angeles, but basketball fans around the world. The 1979-80 season began with enormous anticipation in Los Angeles. The Lakers had drafted Magic Johnson, this charismatic phenomenon who had captivated college basketball, and they were pairing him with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the legendary center who had been with the Lakers since 1975 and who was already one of the greatest players in basketball history. Kareem, formerly known as Lou Alcine D'Or, had a signature shot, the skyhook, that was virtually unblockable, a sweeping arc that released the ball from such a height that defenders could only watch helplessly as it dropped through the basket. The combination of Magic's creativity and passing with Kareem's scoring prowess created immediate chemistry. Magic would push the ball up the court, eyes scanning for opportunities, sometimes throwing passes that seemed to defy logic, finding teammates in positions where defenders didn't expect the ball to go. When the fast break wasn't available, he would get the ball to Kareem in the post, and the skyhook would do its work. The Lakers were exciting, winning games and entertaining fans with a style that emphasized speed and flair. They advanced through the playoffs, reaching the NBA Finals against the Philadelphia 76ers, led by the great Julius Erving. The series was competitive, hard-fought, and it reached Game 6 with the Lakers leading 3-2, one victory away from the championship. But there was a problem. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar had severely sprained his ankle in Game 5 and wouldn't be able to play in Game 6, which was scheduled for Philadelphia. The Lakers would have to try to clinch the championship on the road without their best player, without the scorer they relied on most. Coach Paul Westhead made an unconventional decision. He would start Magic Johnson at center, moving the 6'9" point guard to Kareem's position, asking the rookie to fill the role of the team's most important player in the most crucial game of the season. It was an enormous ask, the kind of pressure that might crush a young player, that might expose inexperience and lead to disaster. But Magic Johnson was not an ordinary rookie, and what happened in Game 6 would become one of the most legendary performances in NBA Finals history. Magic scored 42 points. He grabbed 15 rebounds. He dished out 7 assists. He played center, he played forward, he played guard. He played everywhere, doing whatever the Lakers needed, filling every role, dominating in ways that seemed impossible for a rookie in his first Finals game without the team's best player. The Lakers won convincingly, claiming the championship on Philadelphia's home court, and Magic Johnson, just 20 years old, was named Finals MVP, becoming the first rookie ever to win the award. The performance announced to the basketball world that Magic Johnson was special, that the Lakers had found something extraordinary, that this young player with the infectious smile and the creative passing could be the centerpiece of something great. The championship validated Jerry Buss's vision, proved that his investment and his approach were working, that the Lakers were on the path to becoming the franchise he envisioned. Over the next few seasons, the Lakers continued to build and refine their identity. In 1981, Pat Riley took over as head coach, initially on an interim basis, but soon establishing himself as the perfect coach for this team. Riley was intense and demanding, a perfectionist who pushed his players relentlessly, but who also understood the talent he had and how to maximize it. He embraced the fast-paced style that Jerry Buss wanted, that Magic Johnson enabled, and he coached the Lakers to play what would become known as Showtime basketball. Showtime was more than just a marketing slogan. It was a philosophy, an approach to the game that emphasized speed, transition offense, and spectacular plays that entertained fans while also being highly effective. When the Lakers got a defensive rebound or a steal, they pushed the ball up the court immediately, racing toward their basket before the defense could get set. Magic would lead the break, his head up, his eyes seeing the entire floor, and he would deliver passes behind his back, no look, threaded through impossibly tight windows that found teammates for easy baskets. The no-look passes became Magic's signature, moments when he would look one direction while passing another, deceiving defenders and delighting fans. The passes seemed almost magical, hence his nickname, creating assists that appeared on highlight reels, and that made the Lakers must-see television. Basketball had never been played quite like this before, with this combination of speed and creativity, with this emphasis on entertainment alongside winning. From 1980 through 1988, spanning 9 seasons, the Lakers won 5 NBA championships. 5 titles in 9 years. It was a level of sustained excellence that rivaled the great Lakers teams of the past, that established this group as one of the dynasty teams in NBA history. They won in 1980 with Magic's incredible finals performance. They won again in 1982, defeating Philadelphia and avenging previous finals losses. They won in 1985, again beating the Celtics. They repeated as champions in 1987 and won once more in 1988. The Lakers-Celtics rivalry was renewed during this era, with Magic Johnson and Larry Bird continuing the competition that had begun in that famous 1979 NCAA championship game. The Celtics, led by Bird along with Kevin McHale and Robert Parrish, were the Lakers' primary obstacle to even more championships. The two teams met in the finals multiple times during the 1980s, creating a rivalry that defined the decade and that brought unprecedented attention to the NBA. Magic versus Bird, Lakers versus Celtics, Showtime versus Celtic Pride. The matchups had everything, and they helped elevate professional basketball to new heights of popularity. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar remained a cornerstone throughout most of this era, his skyhook still devastating, his presence still anchoring the Lakers' offense. In 1984, during a game against the Utah Jazz, Kareem made a skyhook that put him past Wilt Chamberlain as the NBA's all-time leading scorer. The moment was historic, the culmination of a career spent scoring with consistency and grace, with that one unblockable shot deployed thousands of times over 2 decades. The all-time scoring record would stand as Kareem's, a testament to longevity and sustained excellence that few players could match. Kareem played through the 1988-89 season, his 20th year in professional basketball, retiring at age 42 after helping the Lakers win the championship in 1988. His final season was a farewell tour, with opponents and fans honoring him in every city, recognizing one of the greatest players to ever play the game. When he finally retired, he left as the all-time leading scorer, a 6-time MVP, and a winner of 6 championships including 5 with the Lakers. The 1988 championship was particularly special because it came against the Detroit Pistons in a hard-fought 7-game series. The Pistons were physical and tough, playing a bruising style that contrasted sharply with the Lakers' up-tempo approach. Game 7 was played in Los Angeles, and the Lakers needed someone to step up to deliver a performance that would secure the championship. That someone was James Worthy. Worthy, nicknamed Big Game James for his ability to perform in crucial moments, had been with the Lakers since being drafted first overall in 1982. He was a versatile forward who could score, rebound, and defend, fitting perfectly into the Showtime system with his ability to run the floor and finish fast breaks. In Game 7 of the 1988 Finals, Worthy delivered one of the greatest performances in Finals history, recording a triple-double with 36 points, 16 rebounds, and 10 assists. It was a complete performance, Worthy dominating every aspect of the game, carrying the Lakers to victory and earning Finals MVP honors. The 1988 championship made the Lakers back-to-back champions, repeating their 1987 title and cementing this team's place among the all-time greats. They had won 5 championships in 9 years, had dominated the Western Conference so thoroughly that they won 9 consecutive Pacific Division titles from 1982 through 1990, had become not just successful but iconic, the franchise that represented NBA excellence and Los Angeles glamour. The Showtime Lakers transcended basketball, becoming part of popular culture in ways few sports teams ever achieve. Celebrities filled the courtside seats at the Forum, with Jack Nicholson becoming almost as famous for his Lakers fandom as for his acting. The games were events, social occasions where being seen mattered as much as watching the game. The Lakers were cool, exciting, glamorous. Everything Jerry Buss had envisioned when he purchased the franchise. Magic Johnson became a global icon, his smile and his style making him one of the most recognizable athletes in the world. Kareem's quiet dignity and his sustained excellence made him a legend. James Worthy's big-game performances created a reputation for clutch play. And Pat Riley, with his slicked-back hair and his Armani suits, became the image of the sophisticated, successful coach, as much a part of the Lakers' brand as any player. The fast-paced offense, the no-look passes, the celebrity atmosphere, the championships, all of it combined to create something unique in sports history. The Showtime Lakers were more than just a great basketball team. They were an entertainment phenomenon, a cultural force that helped transform the NBA from a struggling league into the global powerhouse it would become. They made basketball exciting for casual fans, made it glamorous and aspirational, proved that sports could be entertainment in the fullest sense while still being competitive and meaningful. As the 1980s came to a close, as the dynasty aged and new challenges emerged, the Showtime era would be remembered as a golden age, a time when the Lakers played beautiful basketball while also being impossibly cool, when winning championships and entertaining fans weren't competing goals but complementary ones. Magic and Kareem and Worthy had given Los Angeles and the basketball world something special, something that would be celebrated and remembered long after they retired, something that established the Lakers as not just the league's most successful franchise, but its most glamorous one as well. The 1990s arrived with the Lakers still riding the momentum of the Showtime era, still competing at a high level even as the core of the dynasty aged. Pat Riley had moved on after the 1990 season, replaced by Mike Dunleavy as head coach, but Magic Johnson remained, still orchestrating the Lakers' offense with his creative passing, still capable of spectacular performances even as he entered his 30s. The hope was that the Lakers could extend their competitive window, that even without Riley they could continue competing for championships, that Magic could carry them through a transition period until new stars emerged. The 1990-91 season saw the Lakers win 58 games and advance through the Western Conference playoffs, reaching the NBA Finals for the 9th time in Magic's 12 seasons with the franchise. It was a remarkable testament to sustained excellence, to Magic's ability to elevate everyone around him, to the organizational culture that had been built during the Showtime years. The finals opponent was the Chicago Bulls, led by Michael Jordan, who was seeking his first championship after years of playoff disappointments against the Detroit Pistons. The series was not competitive. The Bulls, younger and hungrier, with Jordan at the absolute peak of his powers, overwhelmed the aging Lakers. Chicago won the first game in Los Angeles, then won the second. The series moved to Chicago, and the Bulls won the third game. They completed the sweep with a Game 4 victory, claiming the championship while the Lakers could only watch, outclassed and outplayed, unable to mount any serious resistance. The sweep was humiliating for a franchise accustomed to championships, a harsh reminder that the Showtime era was truly over, that age and time had caught up with the Lakers. Magic Johnson was 31 years old, still playing well, but no longer at the transcendent level that had defined his peak years. James Worthy was aging as well, his explosive athleticism diminished. The supporting cast, while solid, lacked the star power needed to compete with championship-caliber teams. The Lakers needed to rebuild, to find new stars, to transition to whatever would come next. But before that rebuilding could truly begin, before the franchise could chart a course forward, everything changed in the most shocking and unexpected way imaginable. On November 7, 1991, just weeks into the new season, Magic Johnson called a press conference. The basketball world watched, wondering what the announcement might be. Speculation ran wild. Was Magic retiring? Was there a trade? What could possibly warrant such sudden and dramatic news? And then Magic delivered the statement that stunned not just basketball, but the entire world. He was HIV positive, and he was retiring from basketball immediately. The announcement was almost incomprehensible. Magic Johnson, the face of the Lakers, the player who had defined Showtime, the man whose smile and personality had made him one of the most beloved figures in sports, had HIV, a virus that in 1991 carried a death sentence in most people's minds, that was associated primarily with the AIDS crisis that had devastated communities throughout the 1980s. The news was devastating, shocking, almost impossible to process. Magic explained that he had contracted HIV through heterosexual contact, that he would be retiring to focus on his health, that he hoped to be an advocate for HIV awareness and safe practices. The press conference was emotional, with Magic maintaining his characteristic positivity even while delivering news that would have crushed most people, promising to continue living his life fully despite the diagnosis. The impact on the Lakers was immediate and profound. Overnight, Showtime was over. Not because of age or declining skills or competitive balance, but because of a virus, because of a medical reality that forced the franchise's greatest player into sudden retirement. There was no transition period, no gradual passing of the torch, no time to prepare, just the abrupt end of an era, the closing of a chapter in the most unexpected and heartbreaking way possible. The Lakers tried to continue the season without Magic, tried to compete and remain relevant, but the heart had been ripped out of the organization. The joy that had characterized Showtime, the fun and creativity that Magic had brought to every game, was gone. The team finished the season with a mediocre record and missed the playoffs for the first time since 1976. A drought of consistency suddenly ended, the excellence that had been taken for granted suddenly absent. The mid-1990s were difficult years for the Lakers franchise. They were in transition, caught between the Showtime era that had ended and whatever the future might hold, trying to remain competitive while also building for long-term success. The roster churned with players coming and going, with draft picks and trades and free agent signings that sometimes worked out and sometimes didn't. Coaches were hired and fired as the franchise searched for the right leadership to guide them through this uncertain period. There were occasional bright spots, moments when the Lakers showed flashes of their former glory, when they pulled off upset victories or made unexpected playoff runs that gave fans hope. In 1995, the Lakers, led by Cedric Ceballos, Nick Van Exel, and Eddie Jones, made the playoffs and pulled off a stunning upset in the first round, defeating the Seattle Supersonics, who had finished with a much better record. The victory was celebrated in Los Angeles, proof that the Lakers could still compete even without the star power of the Showtime era. But these moments of success were inconsistent, followed by disappointing seasons or early playoff exits that reminded everyone that the Lakers were no longer among the NBA's elite. The franchise that had been so accustomed to championships, to competing at the highest level year after year, now found itself struggling to even make the playoffs some seasons, watching other teams celebrate while the Lakers rebuilt. The uncertainty extended beyond just the roster. The entire identity of the franchise was in question. What were the Lakers without Magic? What did Lakers basketball look like without Showtime? How could the franchise recapture the excellence and the glamour that had defined them through the 1980s? These questions didn't have easy answers, and the mid-1990s became a period of searching, of trial and error, of trying to find the formula that would return the Lakers to championship contention. Jerry Buss remained committed to excellence, continued to invest in the franchise, continued to believe that the Lakers could and would return to greatness. But even his resources and his vision couldn't manufacture success overnight, couldn't simply buy a championship team when the right pieces weren't available. The NBA was competitive, with multiple franchises building strong teams, and the Lakers had to navigate salary caps and draft positions and all the complications of modern sports management. Magic Johnson's retirement had ended Showtime instantly, had created a void that couldn't be filled by any single player or any coaching change. The organization needed to rebuild from the ground up, needed to find new stars who could carry the franchise forward, needed to rediscover the winning formula that had made them the NBA's most glamorous and successful team. The task was daunting, the path forward unclear, and the mid-1990s felt like wilderness years, a time of uncertainty and frustration for a franchise and a fan base accustomed to excellence. But even during these difficult years, even as the Lakers struggled to find their identity and their way back to championship contention, the foundation was being laid for what would come next. Young players were developing, organizational changes were being implemented, and circumstances would eventually align to bring new stars to Los Angeles who would launch another dynasty. The mid-1990s were painful, a necessary transition between eras, a period when the Lakers had to accept that their past glory couldn't simply be extended indefinitely, but had to be rebuilt with new pieces and new approaches. Perhaps the memory that lingers is Magic Johnson at that press conference, smiling even while delivering devastating news, maintaining his positivity even in the face of a diagnosis that would have crushed most people. The end of Showtime had come suddenly, unexpectedly, heartbreakingly. But the Lakers' story was far from over. It was simply entering another chapter, another period of transition that would eventually give way to new stars, new championships, and new glory. The mid-1990s uncertainty ended dramatically in the summer of 1996, when Jerry Buss and the Lakers front office made two moves that would define the franchise for the next decade and launch another dynasty to rival the Showtime era. The first move was signing Shaquille O'Neal as a free agent, luring the dominant center away from the Orlando Magic with a 7-year, $121 million contract that was the largest in NBA history at that time. The second was drafting a 17-year-old guard straight out of high school, a kid from Philadelphia named Kobe Bryant, who had impressed scouts with his skill and confidence, but who was still raw, still years away from reaching his potential. Shaquille O'Neal was already one of the most physically dominant players in basketball, a 7'1", 300-pound center whose combination of size, strength, and surprising agility made him virtually unstoppable near the basket. He had been the first overall pick in the 1992 draft, had spent 4 years in Orlando establishing himself as a force, and was now entering his prime years. O'Neal could score at will in the paint, simply overpowering defenders with strength that seemed almost unfair, dunking with such force that he had actually shattered backboards on multiple occasions. But he was more than just a physical specimen. He had soft hands, good footwork for a player his size, and charisma that made him a marketable star. Kobe Bryant was the opposite, young, unproven, coming straight from high school at a time when that path was still unusual and risky. He had grown up in Italy where his father had played professional basketball, had developed his game by studying the greats, and arrived in the NBA with supreme confidence despite never having played college basketball. At 17, he was the youngest player in NBA history, a skinny teenager who would need years to develop physically, but who already possessed skills and footwork that reminded observers of Michael Jordan. The pairing seemed almost too perfect. A dominant center in his prime paired with a young guard with unlimited potential, the veteran star and the teenage prodigy, the established force and the future. If they could learn to play together, if the personalities could coexist, if Kobe could develop as quickly as his talent suggested, the Lakers would have the foundation for another championship team. The first few seasons were about development and adjustment. O'Neal dominated immediately, averaging over 26 points and 12 rebounds per game in his first season with the Lakers, establishing himself as the team's centerpiece. Kobe, meanwhile, came off the bench initially, learning the NBA game, developing his body and his skills, occasionally showing flashes of brilliance that hinted at what he might become. The Lakers won 56 games in O'Neal's first season but were swept out of the playoffs in the second round, proof that talent alone wasn't enough, that championship teams required more than just star power. By 1999, both Shaq and Kobe had developed into all-stars, but the Lakers still hadn't broken through to championship success. The front office concluded that the missing piece was coaching, that the talent was there but needed the right guidance and system to maximize its potential. So they hired Phil Jackson, who had won 6 championships coaching the Chicago Bulls with Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen, who brought with him a sophisticated offensive system called the triangle offense and a Zen-influenced coaching philosophy that emphasized mindfulness and team unity. Jackson's arrival transformed the Lakers. The triangle offense gave structure to the team's attack while also allowing both Shaq and Kobe opportunities to showcase their individual brilliance within a team framework. Jackson managed the egos and personalities, creating a culture where the stars bought into team concepts even while still being stars. The results were immediate. In the 1999-2000 season, Jackson's first year, the Lakers won 67 games and advanced through the playoffs to reach the NBA Finals. Their finals opponent was the Indiana Pacers, and the series went to 6 games before the Lakers claimed the championship, their first since 1988, ending a 12-year drought that had felt interminable to a franchise accustomed to success. Shaquille O'Neal was named Finals MVP, averaging 38 points and 17 rebounds per game in the series, dominating with a performance that reminded older fans of Wilt Chamberlain's physical dominance. The celebration in Los Angeles was enormous, the city embracing its Lakers once again, Jerry Buss finally getting the championship he had pursued since Magic's retirement. But the 2000 championship was just the beginning. The 2000 to 2001 season produced perhaps the most dominant playoff run in NBA history. The Lakers went 15-1 through the playoffs, losing just one game, a defeat to the Philadelphia 76ers in Game 1 of the finals, before reeling off 11 consecutive victories to claim the championship. 15 wins and 1 loss. The dominance was total, the excellence sustained, the Lakers looking almost unbeatable for 2 months of playoff basketball. Shaq was again named Finals MVP, again dominating with performances that opposing teams simply had no answer for. Kobe, now fully developed into a superstar in his own right, averaged over 29 points per game in the playoffs, showing that the Lakers had 2 players capable of taking over games, 2 options that defenses couldn't fully contain. The combination was devastating, the spacing impossible for defenses to manage. If you doubled Shaq in the post, Kobe would hurt you from the perimeter. If you focused on stopping Kobe, Shaq would score it well inside. The 2001 to 2002 season brought a 3rd consecutive championship, completing a three-peat that established this Lakers team among the all-time greats. Shaq won his 3rd consecutive Finals MVP award, becoming just the 2nd player ever to win the award 3 straight times. The Lakers had their dynasty, their run of dominance that rivaled the Showtime era, their championship legacy extending into a new generation. But beneath the success, tensions were building between the 2 stars. Shaq and Kobe had very different personalities and approaches to the game. Shaq was playful and sometimes lackadaisical during the regular season, coasting at times, knowing he could turn it on in the playoffs when it mattered. Kobe was obsessive about preparation and performance, practicing constantly, demanding excellence from himself and his teammates at all times. Shaq felt he was the team's best player and deserved the lion's share of credit. Kobe believed he was becoming the better player and resented playing second fiddle. The media amplified these tensions, creating narratives about who was more important to the Lakers' success, who deserved more credit for the championships. Phil Jackson tried to manage the relationship, tried to keep both stars focused on team goals, but the underlying friction persisted, growing stronger as the years passed. The 2003 season ended with a playoff loss to the San Antonio Spurs in the Western Conference semifinals, the first year since 1999 that the Lakers didn't reach the finals. The 2004 season brought another finals appearance, but this time against the Detroit Pistons, who played physical, team-oriented basketball that disrupted the Lakers' star-centric approach. The Lakers lost the series in 5 games, a stunning upset that exposed the dysfunction within the team. After the finals loss, the tensions between Shaq and Kobe exploded into open conflict. Both stars made it clear they couldn't continue playing together, that the relationship had deteriorated beyond repair. Phil Jackson, caught in the middle and exhausted by trying to manage the feud, decided to step down as coach. The Lakers faced a choice, keep Shaq or keep Kobe, but they couldn't keep both. The decision was made to build around Kobe, the younger player who had more years ahead of him. In the summer of 2004, Shaquille O'Neal was traded to the Miami Heat, ending the partnership that had produced 3 championships and countless memorable moments. Shaq left angry, feeling betrayed, insisting that the Lakers would regret choosing Kobe over him. Kobe remained, accepting the mantle of franchise cornerstone, promising to lead the Lakers to more championships without Shaq. The Shaq-Kobe era had been glorious. 3 championships in 4 years. One of the most dominant playoff runs in NBA history, individual performances that would be remembered and celebrated for decades. But it had also been tumultuous, marked by internal tension that eventually destroyed the partnership, that forced the Lakers to choose between 2 superstars rather than finding a way to keep them together. The dynasty had ended not because of age or competitive balance, but because the personalities couldn't coexist, because the egos couldn't be reconciled, because winning championships wasn't enough to overcome the fundamental differences between the 2 stars. The trade of Shaq marked another transition for the Lakers, another period of uncertainty as they tried to build a championship team around Kobe Bryant, as they searched for the right supporting cast and the right coaching to maximize his talents. The three championships stood as testament to what Shaq and Kobe had accomplished together, even as the breakup served as a reminder that even the most successful partnerships sometimes end badly, that chemistry and compatibility matter as much as talent when building championship teams. After Shaquille O'Neal's departure, Kobe Bryant stood alone as the Lakers' franchise player for the first time in his career. The championships had been won with Shaq as the dominant force, with Kobe as the brilliant sidekick. Now the team was his, the responsibility entirely on his shoulders, and he would have to prove that he could lead the Lakers to championships without the dominant center who had won 3 Finals MVP awards. The pressure was immense, the expectations crushing, and the next few seasons would test Kobe in ways he had never been tested before. The 2004 to 2005 and 2005 to 2006 seasons were difficult for the Lakers as a team, finishing with mediocre records and missing the playoffs or exiting early. But individually, these seasons showcased Kobe Bryant at his absolute scoring peak, demonstrating an offensive ability that placed him in rare company among basketball's all-time greats. Kobe was scoring with a volume and efficiency that few players have ever matched, taking over games single-handedly, willing the Lakers to victories through sheer individual brilliance. And then came January 22, 2006, a game against the Toronto Raptors at the Staples Center that would produce one of the most remarkable individual performances in basketball history. The Lakers were struggling, down by 18 points in the third quarter, their playoff hopes fading with each loss. Kobe decided he would not let them lose. He began scoring at a pace that seemed almost supernatural, hitting shots from every position on the court, in every conceivable way. Jump shots, drives to the basket, three-pointers, free throws, the points kept accumulating. As the fourth quarter progressed, as Kobe kept scoring and the Lakers kept cutting into Toronto's lead, the crowd began to realize they were witnessing something historic. Kobe had 60 points, then 70, and still he kept scoring. The final minutes became an exercise in watching basketball history unfold in real time, each basket adding to a total that was approaching numbers that simply didn't happen in modern basketball. When the final buzzer sounded, when the game ended with the Lakers victorious, Kobe Bryant had scored 81 points. 81 points in a single game. The second highest scoring total in NBA history, surpassed only by Wilt Chamberlain's mythical 100-point game in 1962. Kobe had scored more than half his team's points, had carried them from an 18-point deficit to victory, had produced a performance so dominant that it seemed to belong to a different era of basketball when such scoring explosions were more common. The 81-point game became instant legend, replayed endlessly, discussed, and analyzed, standing as proof that Kobe Bryant could do things on a basketball court that perhaps only a handful of players in history could match. But individual brilliance, as spectacular as it was, didn't translate to team success. The Lakers remained mediocre, and Kobe began to face questions about whether he could actually lead a team to championships, whether he needed a dominant big man like Shaq to win titles, whether his style of play, so dependent on his own scoring, was actually conducive to winning at the highest level. The 2007 to 2008 season brought a crucial addition to the roster when the Lakers acquired Pau Gasol in a trade with the Memphis Grizzlies. Gasol was a skilled 7-foot power forward from Spain who could score, rebound, and pass, a versatile big man who complemented Kobe's game perfectly. With Gasol alongside him, Kobe finally had the kind of talented teammate he needed, someone who could carry part of the load, who could create opportunities for others, who could help shoulder the responsibility of winning. The transformation was immediate. The Lakers won 57 games and reached the NBA Finals, where they faced the Boston Celtics in a renewal of the historic rivalry. The Celtics, led by Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, and Ray Allen, their own Big Three, defeated the Lakers in 6 games, but the season was still considered a success. Kobe had led the Lakers back to championship contention, had proven he could elevate a team even without Shaq, and he was named the league's most valuable player for the first time in his career. The MVP award was validation for Kobe, recognition that he was considered the best player in basketball, that his individual excellence was being acknowledged at the highest level. But the award also felt incomplete without a championship to accompany it, without the ultimate prize that Kobe valued above all else. He had 3 championship rings from the Shaq era, but he needed to prove he could win as the undisputed leader, as the team's best player and primary option. The 2008 to 2009 season brought that opportunity. The Lakers won 65 games, the best record in the Western Conference, and advanced through the playoffs to reach the finals once again. This time, their opponent was the Orlando Magic, and the Lakers were not to be denied. They won the series in 5 games, claiming the championship, and Kobe Bryant was named Finals MVP, the validation he had sought, the proof that he could lead a team to a title without Shaquille O'Neal. The celebration was sweet, tinged with vindication. Kobe had proven his critics wrong, had demonstrated that he could be the franchise cornerstone who delivers championships, that his style of play could work when surrounded by the right teammates and coached by the right system. Phil Jackson had returned to coach the Lakers in 2005, and now he had won his 10th championship, tying Red Auerbach for the most in NBA history as a coach. The 2009-10 season brought another championship run, with the Lakers winning 57 games and advancing to face the Boston Celtics in the finals for a rematch of the 2008 series. This series went the full 7 games, with both teams battling to exhaustion, with every game fiercely contested and every possession crucial. Game 7 was played at the Staples Center, and the Lakers won 83-79 in a defensive struggle, claiming back-to-back championships and giving Kobe his 5th ring, tying him with Magic Johnson and placing him among the most decorated players in Lakers history. Kobe was again named Finals MVP, cementing his legacy as one of the great playoff performers in basketball history. 2 consecutive championships as the team's undisputed leader, 2 Finals MVP awards to go with the 3 championships he had won alongside Shaq. The resume was complete, the validation total. Kobe Bryant had proven everything he needed to prove, had silenced every critic, had established himself as one of the greatest players in basketball history. The next few years brought decline as Kobe aged and injuries began to accumulate. Achilles tendon problems, knee issues, shoulder injuries. The body that had carried him through 20 seasons was breaking down, no longer able to withstand the punishment of NBA basketball. The Lakers struggled, missing the playoffs, rebuilding around younger players while Kobe's role diminished. In 2015, Kobe announced that the 2015-16 season would be his last, beginning a farewell tour that saw him honored in every NBA city, celebrated by fans who appreciated what he had accomplished even if they had rooted against him throughout his career. The season was difficult, the Lakers losing more games than they won, Kobe's body no longer capable of the performances that had defined his career. And then came April 13, 2016, the final game of Kobe's career, played at the Staples Center against the Utah Jazz. The game was meaningless in the standings. The Lakers were eliminated from playoff contention, playing out the string at the end of a disappointing season. But for Kobe and for Lakers fans, the game was everything. The last chance to see him play, the final opportunity to celebrate a career that had spanned 2 decades and produced 5 championships. What happened that night transcended expectations, produced a moment so perfect that it seemed scripted by Hollywood. Kobe, playing his final game at age 37 with a body that was worn out and broken down, somehow summoned one more brilliant performance. He scored 60 points, carrying the Lakers to an improbable comeback victory, turning a 13-point fourth-quarter deficit into a win that sent the crowd into absolute hysteria. 60 points in his final game. It was vintage Kobe, one last reminder of what he had been, one last demonstration of the scoring ability that had defined his career. The ovation after the final buzzer lasted for minutes, the crowd unwilling to let him leave, unwilling to accept that this was truly the end. Kobe addressed the crowd, thanking them, his voice breaking with emotion, ending with 2 words that perfectly captured his approach to basketball and to life. Mamba out. The Mamba, Kobe's nickname, taken from the black mamba snake, representing his killer instinct and his striking ability, was indeed out, retiring with 60 points, with 5 championships, with memories that would last forever. The 60-point farewell became one of the most emotional moments in sports history, a perfect ending to a legendary career, a reminder that sometimes reality can deliver moments as dramatic as any fiction. Kobe Bryant's career with the Lakers had spanned 20 years, from the skinny 17-year-old drafted in 1996 to the aging veteran taking one last curtain call in 2016. He had won 5 championships, had scored over 33,000 points in a Lakers uniform, had given the franchise and its fans countless memories. The 81-point game, the back-to-back championships, the competitive fire that never diminished, the Mamba mentality that demanded excellence and refused to accept anything less. The tragic end to Kobe's story, his death in a helicopter crash in January 2020 at age 41, along with his daughter Gianna and 7 others, cast his retirement and his final game in an even more poignant light. The 60-point farewell had seemed like a perfect ending to a basketball career, a moment of joy and celebration. In retrospect, it became something more, a final gift to fans who loved him, a last memory of Kobe at his competitive best, a reminder of the joy he brought to basketball and to the millions who watched him play. As sleep approaches, perhaps the image that remains is Kobe, in that final game, hitting shot after shot, carrying the Lakers one last time, giving everything he had for one final performance. After Kobe Bryant's retirement in 2016, after that perfect 60-point farewell that had sent Staples Center into delirium, the Lakers faced a reality they hadn't experienced in decades. They were not good, not competitive, not even close to the championship-caliber teams that had defined the franchise throughout most of its history. The retirement of their greatest player since Magic Johnson left a void that couldn't be filled, and the Lakers descended into a period of struggle that would test the patience of a fan base that had grown accustomed to excellence, to playoff appearances, to championships as regular occurrences rather than distant dreams. The drought had actually begun before Kobe's retirement. The 2013 season had ended the Lakers' consecutive playoff streak, snapping a run of success that stretched back to the mid-1970s. For the first time in years, the Lakers weren't playing meaningful basketball in April and May, weren't competing in the postseason, weren't part of the championship conversation. The team that had been so accustomed to success suddenly found itself watching the playoffs from home, experiencing what fans of most other franchises dealt with regularly, but what Lakers fans had rarely endured. The 2013-14 season brought more of the same. Another year of losing, another spring without playoffs, another season that ended with disappointment and questions about when and how the Lakers would return to contention. Kobe was still playing, but was dealing with serious injuries. His Achilles tendon had ruptured in 2013, and the recovery process kept him out for most of that season. When he did play, he was a shadow of his former self, his body no longer capable of the performances that had defined his career. The losses accumulated, season after season. 2014-15, another year out of the playoffs. 2015-16. Kobe's farewell tour, celebrated individually but accompanied by team futility, finishing with just 17 wins against 65 losses. 2016-17. The first season without Kobe, the Lakers adrift without their longtime leader, finishing with 26 wins. 5 consecutive seasons without playoff basketball, the longest drought the franchise had experienced since the 1950s, since those years in Minneapolis before they moved to Los Angeles. For a franchise that had won 16 championships, that had employed legends from George Mikan to Magic Johnson to Kobe Bryant, that had been defined by excellence for most of its existence, these years were humbling and painful. The Staples Center, once the epicenter of NBA glamour and celebrity culture, now featured more empty seats than sellouts, with fans unwilling to invest time and money in watching a rebuilding team lose games against superior opponents. The Lakers were no longer special, no longer the team that attracted the biggest free agents or commanded national television audiences. They were just another struggling franchise trying to rebuild, no different from the teams that had spent decades in the Lakers' shadow. The franchise tried to rebuild through the draft, using their lottery picks to select young players who they hoped might develop into stars capable of returning the Lakers to contention. In 2014, they drafted Julius Randle, a power forward from Kentucky. In 2015, they selected D'Angelo Russell with the 2nd overall pick, a guard they hoped might become the franchise's next great playmaker. In 2016, they drafted Brandon Ingram 2nd overall, a lanky forward with potential, but still years away from reaching it. In 2017, they added Lonzo Ball with the 2nd pick, another guard whose passing ability reminded some observers of a young Magic Johnson, though the comparison carried enormous pressure. These young players showed flashes of promise, moments where their potential seemed real and their future bright. Russell could score and create for teammates. Ingram had length and skill that suggested he might develop into a star. Ball could pass brilliantly and push the pace. Randall provided energy and rebounding. The pieces seemed like they might fit together, like they might develop into a core capable of competing. But the development was inconsistent, the growth slower than hoped. Some nights, the young Lakers would play inspired basketball and pull off upset victories against playoff teams, showing glimpses of what they might become. Other nights, they would look lost and overmatched, making rookie mistakes and failing to execute in crucial moments. The progress was there, gradual improvement season by season, but it wasn't translating to wins at a rate that satisfied a fan base desperate for relevance, desperate to return to the playoffs, desperate for the Lakers to matter again. The inconsistency was frustrating because the talent seemed real. These weren't hopeless players destined for mediocre careers. They were legitimately skilled young basketball players who in most organizations would be celebrated as building blocks for the future. But they were Lakers, playing for a franchise where expectations are different, where patience runs thin, where anything short of championship contention feels like failure. The pressure on these young players to be great immediately, to restore the Lakers to glory, was enormous and perhaps unfair. The coaching situation didn't help. The Lakers cycled through coaches during this period, unable to find stability or consistency in leadership. Mike D'Antoni, Byron Scott, Luke Walton, each brought different approaches and philosophies. Each tried to develop the young core, and each ultimately couldn't produce the wins that would have bought them more time. The constant coaching changes made it difficult for players to develop within consistent systems, made it hard to establish culture and identity, contributed to the general sense that the organization was floundering rather than following a clear plan. Jerry Buss had passed away in 2013, leaving control of the Lakers to his children, primarily his daughter Jeannie Buss, who became the controlling owner. The transition in ownership coincided with the team's struggles, creating questions about whether the Lakers' glory days were tied specifically to Jerry Buss's leadership, whether the next generation could maintain the standard of excellence he had established. Jeannie Buss proved committed to winning, committed to returning the Lakers to championship contention, but the path forward wasn't clear, the solutions not obvious. The mid-2010s were wilderness years for the Lakers, a time when the franchise that had defined NBA success found itself lost and searching for direction. The young core showed promise but couldn't break through to consistent success. The coaching carousel kept spinning. The wins didn't come. And Lakers fans, accustomed to celebrating championships and playoff success, had to adjust to a new reality where hope was about future potential rather than present achievement, where draft picks and player development mattered more than championship banners. But even during these difficult years, even as the Lakers struggled through their longest playoff drought in franchise history, the potential for transformation remained. This was still the Lakers, still the franchise that attracted attention and resources, still the organization that played in Los Angeles with all the advantages that market provided. The rebuild was taking longer than anyone wanted. The young core wasn't developing as quickly as hoped, but the foundation was being laid for what would come next. Free agents would eventually come. Trades would eventually be made. And the Lakers, who had rebuilt from failure before, who had survived transitions from Mekon to West to Magic to Kobe, would rebuild again, would find new stars to carry the franchise forward, would return to the championship conversation. The question wasn't if, but when, and how, and with whom. The answers were coming, though nobody quite knew it, yet as the Lakers played out another losing season, as young players developed inconsistently, as the franchise searched for the formula that would restore Lakers basketball to its rightful place at the top of the NBA. The summer of 2018 brought the moment Lakers fans had been waiting for, the breakthrough that would finally end the playoff drought and restore the franchise to relevance. LeBron James, widely considered the best basketball player in the world, perhaps the greatest of his generation, perhaps one of the greatest of all time, signed with the Lakers as a free agent. The news sent shockwaves through the NBA and brought immediate validation to a franchise that had spent 5 years in the wilderness, watching other teams compete for championships while the Lakers rebuilt. LeBron James was 33 years old when he signed with the Lakers. entering what would normally be considered the decline phase of a career, but still performing at an MVP level. He had spent 4 years with the Miami Heat, winning 2 championships, then returned to his hometown Cleveland Cavaliers for 4 more years, delivering the championship that city had desperately sought. Now he was choosing Los Angeles, bringing his talents to the Lakers, accepting the challenge of restoring a fallen giant to championship contention. The signing was about more than just basketball. LeBron had business interests in entertainment and media, aspirations beyond the court that Los Angeles could facilitate better than any other city. He was thinking about his post-playing career, about building a media empire, about opportunities that came from being in the entertainment capital of the world. But he also wanted to win more championships, to add to his legacy, to prove he could succeed with a third franchise after his triumphs in Miami and Cleveland. The immediate impact was palpable. The Lakers were relevant again. Nationally televised games returned to the schedule. Celebrities packed the Staples Center to watch LeBron play, and the franchise that had been an afterthought during the rebuilding years was suddenly back in the spotlight. The young core that had been developing, Lonzo Ball, Brandon Ingram, Kyle Kuzma, now had a superstar to learn from, to play alongside, to help carry the burden of winning. But the 2018-19 season, LeBron's first with the Lakers, didn't produce the immediate championship success that some had expected. The team was competitive, hovering around .500, but on Christmas Day, LeBron suffered a groin injury that would keep him out for several weeks. The Lakers struggled without him, fell out of playoff position, and despite LeBron's return and strong play down the stretch, they missed the playoffs for the 6th consecutive season. It was the first time in LeBron's career that he had missed the postseason, a disappointing outcome that created questions about whether the Lakers had built the right roster around their superstar. The front office, led by general manager Rob Pelinka under Jeannie Buss's ownership, concluded that they needed to be more aggressive, that simply having LeBron wasn't enough, that they needed another star to compete with the best teams in the NBA. And in the summer of 2019, they made the kind of blockbuster trade that the Lakers had been famous for in previous eras, acquiring Anthony Davis from the New Orleans Pelicans. Anthony Davis was one of the best players in basketball, a 7-foot power forward/center who could do everything: score inside and outside, defend at an elite level, rebound, block shots. He was just 26 years old, entering his prime, and he had specifically requested a trade to the Lakers, wanting to play alongside LeBron, wanting to compete for championships in Los Angeles. The trade cost the Lakers most of their young core. Lonzo Ball, Brandon Ingram, and Josh Hart all went to New Orleans along with draft picks. But the Lakers believed that Davis paired with LeBron gave them the star power needed to win championships. The 2019-20 season began with enormous expectations. LeBron and Davis playing together, surrounded by complementary role players, coached by Frank Vogel, who emphasized defense and had experience building championship-caliber teams. Everything seemed aligned for the Lakers to finally return to championship form. The team started strong, winning games at a pace that put them atop the Western Conference, with LeBron and Davis developing chemistry that made them perhaps the league's most dangerous duo. And then, in March 2020, everything stopped. The COVID-19 pandemic shut down the NBA along with most of society. Games were suspended indefinitely, and nobody knew if or when the season might resume. For months, uncertainty reigned. Players stayed home, and the basketball world waited to see what would happen. Eventually, the NBA devised a plan to complete the season in a bubble environment at Walt Disney World in Orlando, Florida. All teams would stay in hotels on the Disney campus, would play games without fans in attendance, would exist in a completely isolated environment designed to prevent COVID-19 from spreading among players and staff. It was unprecedented, a made-for-TV season played in empty arenas with virtual fans on video screens, the sounds of sneakers and voices echoing through gymnasiums that would normally be packed with thousands of spectators. The Lakers entered the bubble as one of the championship favorites, and they played like it. LeBron was brilliant, putting together performances that belied his age, looking like a player in his prime rather than someone in his mid-30s. Anthony Davis was dominant on both ends of the floor, scoring and defending at the highest level. The supporting cast, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Danny Green, Rajon Rondo, Dwight Howard, all contributed crucial plays and performances. The Lakers advanced through the Western Conference playoffs, defeating the Portland Trail Blazers, the Houston Rockets, and the Denver Nuggets to reach the NBA Finals for the first time since 2010. Their opponent was the Miami Heat, LeBron's former team, creating compelling narratives about LeBron facing the franchise he had won 2 championships with years earlier. The finals were played in the surreal bubble environment, games scheduled with no home court advantage since all games were played at the same neutral site. The Lakers won Game 1, then Game 2, taking a commanding lead in the series. The Heat won Game 3, keeping their championship hopes alive, but the Lakers closed out the series with wins in Games 4, 5, and 6, claiming the championship and ending their 10-year title drought. LeBron James was named Finals MVP, averaging nearly 30 points, 12 rebounds, and 9 assists per game in the series. The award made him the first player in NBA history to win Finals MVP with 3 different franchises. He had won it twice in Miami, once in Cleveland, and now with the Lakers. The achievement added another line to a resume that was already among the most accomplished in basketball history, another proof point that LeBron could succeed in any context, with any franchise, that his greatness transcended team or circumstance. The championship celebration was muted by the bubble environment, no parade through Los Angeles, no massive crowd celebrations, just a trophy presentation in an empty gym and private celebrations among teammates. But the achievement was no less meaningful. The Lakers had won their 17th championship, tying them with the Boston Celtics for the most in NBA history. They had returned to the mountaintop after a decade in the wilderness, had proven that the Lakers' mystique and tradition could still attract stars and produce championships. For LeBron, the championship answered those who had questioned his decision to come to Los Angeles, who had wondered if he could deliver titles for the Lakers the way he had for his previous teams. For Anthony Davis, it validated his decision to force a trade to the Lakers, proved that he had made the right choice in pursuing championships in Los Angeles. For Jeannie Buss and the Lakers organization, it was vindication after years of struggle, proof that the franchise could still compete at the highest level, that the Lakers' tradition of excellence was alive and sustainable. The bubble championship was unique in basketball history, played under circumstances nobody had ever experienced before, achieved in an environment that tested mental toughness as much as basketball skill. Players spent months isolated from their families, living in hotels, playing in empty gyms, dealing with the psychological challenges of the bubble existence. But the Lakers navigated it all successfully, maintained their focus and their excellence, and emerged as champions in the most unusual season the NBA had ever experienced. The 2020 championship marked the beginning of a new chapter in Lakers history, the LeBron James era, producing the title that validated his decision to come to Los Angeles and that extended the franchise's legacy into a new generation. From George Mikan in Minneapolis to Jerry West and Wilt Chamberlain to Magic Johnson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar to Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant to now LeBron James and Anthony Davis, the thread of Lakers' greatness continued, the tradition of championship basketball maintained, the purple and gold still representing excellence at the highest level of the sport. The bubble championship might have been celebrated in unusual circumstances, but it counted just as much as the 16 that came before it, another banner to hang in the rafters, another championship to add to the Lakers' unmatched legacy. The bubble championship in 2020 seemed to open a new window of sustained success, seemed to suggest that the Lakers had built something that could compete for championships annually as long as LeBron James and Anthony Davis remained healthy and performing at high levels. But professional sports rarely cooperate with such optimistic projections, and the years immediately following the championship brought challenges that tested the Lakers' ability to maintain their position among the NBA's elite teams. The 2020-21 season was shortened and disrupted by the ongoing pandemic, with games played in empty arenas for much of the year before fans were gradually allowed back in limited numbers. The Lakers remained competitive, winning games and positioning themselves for another playoff run, but injuries plagued the roster. Anthony Davis missed significant time with various ailments. LeBron suffered a high ankle sprain that kept him out for weeks, and the team's depth was tested repeatedly. They made the playoffs as a lower seed but were eliminated in the first round by the Phoenix Suns, a disappointing end to what had been a difficult season. The 2021-22 season brought even greater turbulence. The Lakers made a controversial trade to acquire Russell Westbrook, a former MVP and explosive guard who the front office believed would give LeBron and Davis another star to share the burden. But the fit was problematic from the start. Westbrook's style of play, so dependent on having the ball in his hands, clashed with LeBron's need to orchestrate the offense, and the Lakers struggled to find chemistry. The season was marked by inconsistency, by losses that felt inexplicable for a team with so much talent, by questions about coaching and roster construction and whether the championship window had already closed. The Lakers missed the playoffs entirely in 2022, a stunning disappointment that created questions about the future, about whether the experiment with LeBron and Davis had run its course, about what direction the franchise should take. For LeBron, now in his late 30s, time was becoming the opponent he couldn't defeat, the challenge that no amount of skill or preparation could fully overcome. How many more years did he have at an elite level? How much longer could the Lakers reasonably expect championship-caliber performances from a player approaching 40? But the 2022-23 season brought renewed hope and a reminder that counting out LeBron James was always premature. The Lakers struggled early, appearing destined for another disappointing season, but mid-season trades brought new energy and better roster balance. The team found its rhythm, started winning games, and made a late-season push that got them into the playoffs as a lower seed. And once in the playoffs, they caught fire, defeating higher-seeded opponents and advancing deeper than most observers had predicted. The Lakers reached the Western Conference Finals in 2023, taking on the Denver Nuggets in a series that would determine who advanced to the NBA Finals. The Lakers fought hard, won games on the road, showed the kind of resilience and championship pedigree that had defined the franchise throughout its history. But the Nuggets, led by Nikola Jokic, proved too strong, winning the series in a hard-fought 4 games and advancing to claim their first championship, while the Lakers went home disappointed but proud of how they had battled. The conference finals appearance was bittersweet, proof that the Lakers could still compete at the highest level, but also a reminder that competing wasn't the same as winning, that reaching the conference finals meant little to a franchise that measured success only in championships. Still, the 2023 run extended LeBron's remarkable career longevity, showed that even in his late 30s he could perform at a level that few players ever reach at any age, that his basketball IQ and his physical maintenance allowed him to remain elite when most players his age had long since retired. As LeBron entered his 40s, as the 2024-25 season approached, questions about the Lakers' future intensified. Anthony Davis remained in his prime, a dominant two-way player when healthy, but injuries continued to be a concern. The supporting cast was solid but not spectacular, role players who could contribute but who weren't stars capable of carrying the team when LeBron or Davis couldn't play. The Lakers were competitive, always dangerous, but they weren't quite championship favorites, weren't quite the team that opponents feared most. And then, in early 2025, the Lakers made a move that shocked the basketball world and signaled their commitment to remaining among the NBA's elite franchises. They acquired Luka Doncic from the Dallas Mavericks in a franchise-altering trade that sent shockwaves through the league. Luka Doncic was already recognized as one of the very best players in basketball, a 25-year-old superstar from Slovenia who combined size, skill, and basketball intelligence in ways that reminded observers of the greatest players in NBA history. He could score from anywhere on the court, could pass with creativity that rivaled Magic Johnson's, could control games through his decision-making and his ability to see plays develop before they happened. He had already led the Mavericks deep into the playoffs, had performed brilliantly on the international stage, and was considered by many to be the player most likely to dominate the NBA for the next decade. The trade required the Lakers to give up significant assets, future draft picks, young players, financial flexibility, but the front office concluded that acquiring a player of Doncic's caliber, a player who could be the franchise cornerstone for the next 15 years, was worth any price. The move was bold, aggressive, the kind of all-in gamble that Jerry Buss would have appreciated, that reflected the Lakers' refusal to accept mediocrity, their commitment to competing for championships regardless of cost. The acquisition of Luka Doncic created immediate excitement in Los Angeles and throughout the basketball world. Pairing him with Anthony Davis gave the Lakers two genuine superstars in their primes, two players capable of dominating games in different ways, two foundational pieces around which championship teams could be built. LeBron James, now in his early 40s but still contributing when healthy, could transition to a supporting role, could mentor Doncic the way veterans had mentored him when he entered the league, could help facilitate the passing of the torch from one generation of Lakers greatness to the next. The trade signaled that the Lakers were thinking long-term while also remaining committed to winning now. Doncic's age meant he could be the franchise's centerpiece for the next decade and beyond, could lead the Lakers through multiple championship windows, could become the next in the long line of Lakers legends that stretched from Mekon to West to Magic to Kobe to LeBron. The purple and gold had found their next star, their next leader, their next player capable of carrying the franchise's enormous expectations and historic legacy. The bold new era had begun. The Lakers, always thinking big, always swinging for the fences, had secured a player who represented the future of basketball, who brought the kind of talent and potential that could extend the Lakers dynasty into a new generation. The tradition of excellence that had defined the franchise since those Minneapolis championships in the late 1940s would continue, carried forward by new stars playing in new eras, but always wearing the same colors, always representing the same commitment to winning, always honoring the same legacy of championship basketball. As thoughts drift toward sleep, as consciousness fades and dreams begin, perhaps the final image is of Luka Doncic in purple and gold, stepping onto the Staples Center court for the first time as a Laker, the next chapter beginning, the future bright with possibility. From Minneapolis to Los Angeles, from Mekon to Magic to Kobe to LeBron to now Luka, the Lakers' story continues, generation after generation, championship after championship, the most storied franchise in basketball history writing new pages while honoring all that came before. The purple and gold will continue to shine, the legacy will continue to grow, and the Lakers will continue to define what it means to pursue excellence in professional basketball. Sweet dreams of championships past and championships future, of legends who built the tradition and stars who will carry it forward, of a franchise that has given basketball fans over 75 years of memories, and that promises many more to come.